With more insights into emotional freedom techniques, this is another free sample taken from the EFT Hub resource, featuring over 100 hours of tapping material and over 50 top tapping professionals. Here is your host and creator of the Hub, Gary Williams.
And now we're going to be sharing some time with Sarah Holland, who shares many insights around using the EFT tapping process with fertility, including the emotional aspects, anxiety, and the pressure that people may feel in this area. Also why people may find it difficult to actually come forward and deal with the problem, and the common factors that may be tapped upon, and other not so common issues you may actually come up against and need to be aware of when working as an EFT practitioner in this area. Sarah shares her own experience with having to deal with her own fertility and starts by explaining how she got involved with the tapping process. Here's Sarah.
I got involved with EFT probably around 7 or 8 years ago now. I was working as a reflexologist at the time, and that was my therapy that I offered to people that came to see me, mostly pregnant women and also women trying to conceive with fertility issues. I just naturally seemed to attract those clients, and I was offering them reflexology, which helped so much. You know, it really did help relax them while they were there, and it did seem to help with a lot of the physical issues they were having. However, the emotions that I saw with the women that came to me suffering with infertility were so strong that, you know, this hour of relaxation I was giving them once a week wasn't really sufficient to deal with it, and I felt a bit of a loss, to be honest.
Right.
So I then discovered EFT, which was one of those light bulb moments, as it is for most people that discover EFT, and I was just amazed by it. I was introduced to it by someone who was training and just looking for some guinea pigs, and I was asked if I had any phobias, and I had a fear of public speaking. Really severe fear of public speaking. I refused to give any talks to groups, even though I was being asked to constantly in my reflexology work. But I just completely refused. It was something I wasn't willing to do. So I thought I'll tackle this phobia, and had a session on the phone. It lasted 20 minutes, and the phobia was completely gone. And I was giving a talk that evening, then I felt completely calm and confident. So that sold me on EFT, as you can imagine.
Right.
And I just started using it immediately with friends and family. And then as soon as I started my training, I started sharing it with those people who came to me for reflexology. And I was really interested to see how it helped with the mindset and all the emotions surrounding fertility issues, which are often very heightened and often cause, you know, very low emotions and depression. So it was interesting to see how even in this kind of situation, EFT really did have a massive impact.
Right.
And went on from there, really, never looked back.
Yeah, and you mentioned reflexology earlier on. I mean, within that, they kind of use the points, the meridian points, don't they, as well?
That's right. Yeah, I mean, it was a natural step, really, as a complementary therapist, that I was always being told about EFT. You know, this is the brand new technique that everyone's using, and it's based on the meridians. And I was very interested in it, and the reflexology community as a whole were talking about it, but I was very skeptical because I thought it sounds too good to be true. And I did actually put off probably for quite a few months looking into it further, because I thought it must be a scam.
Right.
It sounds too good to be true. You know, how can you get rid of lifelong phobias and anxieties and, you know, that quickly? I'd had hypnotherapy for these phobias. I'd had counselling for other issues, and I thought that it needed to be a long, drawn-out process. You know, like most people do, you think therapy takes a long time, and you're not just going to get over these issues quickly. So, yeah, I was sceptical, but nicely surprised when I did discover EFT.
And how did you take EFT and then use it in that area of fertility? What were the challenges that you had?
Well, it was all quite new to me, to be honest. I was presented with all these women that were coming to me. I think reflexology is very popular, you know, for fertility and pregnancy. So naturally, I had this client base there, and it really did interest me. You know, I wasn't so genned up on all the issues at that point, but they were introducing it to me. I was learning through my clients. And then I went on and did some fertility courses, both through reflexology and general studying and learning about fertility, and really increased my knowledge and interest in it. And around about the same time, probably a year or so after I really, was enjoying using fertility with my clients, I decided to try for a baby myself.
Right.
So and had issues myself that lasted 2.5 years before we did finally conceive and have our little baby boy 3 years ago now. And that really gave me that personal perspective. I could suddenly understand what my clients were really going through and what this was all about, and how really vital it is to get a hold on the emotional side of your well-being and health when trying to conceive. It isn't all just about charting your monthly cycles and having IVF and having the tests. You really do need to look at that emotional side. So
Right.
Yeah, it was a real eye-opener.
So is that a common factor then when you're working with people, that there is this emotional aspect?
Absolutely, yeah. Very occasionally I come across women, couples who are completely calm. They might have been trying for a baby for, say, 2, 3, 4 years, whatever, and they still are calm, but they are the minority. The vast majority are on a real emotional roller coaster because there's so much tied up in the decision, isn't there, to have children.
Right.
It's such an emotional decision to start with. It's not something anyone goes into lightly. They go into it because they really want to have children. They really want to, build a family and settle down. So to find out after perhaps 6 months, 12 months or longer that it's not going to be that easy, it's a big, a huge issue for couples to go through. Yeah, lots of emotions are brought up on all different aspects of life.
I suppose there's an expectation, isn't there, that, it should be easy in a way because around you everyone else is having babies and things.
That's right. Yeah, and as soon as you start trying, it seems that the whole world is having a baby, doesn't it?
Right.
It seems that, and especially as a lot of the people I see are getting into their mid to late 30s, because that's a time, unfortunately, when fertility levels drop and it does become more of a problem. And those people, all their friends have already had babies, and their family, their brothers, their sisters, and they can feel like they're the only one with a problem, which isn't true. It affects 1 in 6 couples. It's a very common problem in fertility, but it doesn't feel like it when you're on that side of it. So
what do you find that you end up tapping on then when you're working in that area?
Wow, it's very, very diverse. It really depends on what issues they bring to me. There are common things that I like to work with, though, and investigate with them. First of all, often how we start is their immediate emotional state when they come to me. As with all, therapies like this, people often come to me when they've hit rock bottom. They're not getting any answers from the medical world, and perhaps they've just had an IVF cycle that failed, and they really don't know how they're going to continue. They feel so emotional and so desperate and at the end of their tether. So I will deal with initially, going through what their current emotions are. What is it? Is it sadness? Is it grief? Is it anger, frustration, worry? We deal with the current emotions about what is going on for them right now, worrying about the next month, whatever it might be, test results. That's to take the edge off. I feel that's the best way to start, so that they can have a bit of more space around them and look ahead and be able to look more clearly and logically at what is actually going on for them and find some solutions. So
do you find it's like chemical processes as well, or when you look at the actual conception itself, is there like a tension around that? Does that cause any problems?
Yeah, there's so much research that's out there now proving the link. We know there's lots of mind-body research, but also relating to fertility. There's research that relates to hormone levels. Obviously, stress hormones affect the reproductive hormones.
Right.
And also stress, and when the body goes into that fight or flight reaction, the muscles contract in the body. Well, if a woman is going through IVF and she's having embryos put back into her body and back into her uterus, if she's in a state of stress at that time, which it's a pretty stressful procedure and painful procedure to go through anyway, let alone with all the emotions behind it and the expectation and the desperation for it to work, the uterus has been found to actually contract while that procedure is taking place, which doesn't make it the ideal environment to take in an embryo and let it implant and grow. So there has been research done as well with different mind-body techniques on using those during that stage of IVF and
right.
really increasing the success rate. So anything, we know that the mind and body are so closely linked, and that stress doesn't do anything for our physical health. So, anything that we can do around that time is going to, in my opinion, improve the chance of conception too. physically, yeah.
Right. And as we know, I mean, EFT is very good, isn't it, at relieving tension just generally?
That's right, yeah. I mean, I work with women on their issues surrounding fertility, but I always say, right, go away and use this on everything. Don't just be defined by the fertility stuff that's going on, because if you're getting stressed at work or in your relationship, or just watching the news or television, that's stressing you, whatever, keep using EFT, because whatever you can do to reduce your stress levels and keep calm while you're trying to conceive, because that's their priority still, that's what they're there for, it's all going to be beneficial. So yeah, absolutely.
A reminder that you can hear the full interview inside the EFT Hub resource, and that's at EFTtappinghub.com.